Our next topic is Agile Principles that come with the Agile Manifesto. You probably know all of them, but it's worth going through them again. Both for understanding what Agile is and how you can incorporate it, combine it with something else, and also you will have some questions in your PRINCE2 Agile exam. For example, about the principle of having face-to-face conversations. That's always important for any Agile-related exam. But let's go through them one by one. This is the first principle. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. That's key. We deliver pieces of working software, and that is used to generate feedback. That feedback is our basis for adaptation. That's how we find our way instead of following a plan. And as we discussed before, we have two concepts here. One of them is having increments of working software that are not released. They are useful to generate feedback from the customer side and representatives from the end users. We also have releases, actual releases, for example, every 2 months or 3 months. They are also very helpful because they generate real feedback from the end users. And also they provide early value for the customers because they are using the software, they earn money. The second principle is that welcome changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. It's up to you if you want to call that change. That is our basis for adaptation, and it doesn't matter when we face those new ideas. They are always welcome, and we don't have many problems incorporating them. The reason for that is that the consequences of changes are minimized in Agile. They are not removed, but they are minimized. Mainly because we don't rely on an upfront design, an upfront plan, so we don't need to go back and revise all of them. And the other thing is that the way we develop is also different. Instead of being focused on components, we are focused on functions, on features. So when we add a new feature or make any kind of change on an existing feature, we don't need to make many changes in the previously done features. Sometimes we have to, but not as much as we have in traditional projects. Principle number 3, deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference to the shorter timescales. That is our adaptation. Our feedback loops, main feedback loops are with the increments, pieces of working software we create at the end of each iteration. And based on the principle, we have to have iterations that are not longer than 2 months. Depending on the framework or methodology you're using, this might be more strict. For example, in a Scrum, we are not allowed to have sprints longer than 1 month. When we can, we prefer to have shorter iterations because when they are shorter, you obviously have more increments. And when you have more increments, you can generate more feedback. However, you cannot have them shorter than a certain duration. For example, 1 week usually doesn't work for most people because you need to have enough time to create something you can actually present to the customer. And on the other hand, we break down our items, our functions or features into small parts. But sometimes in some projects, we cannot break them down into really small pieces. And one of the things is that we need to be able to fit those items inside only one iteration. We don't want one item to go through multiple iterations. So that's also another limitation. Principle number 4, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. We have this terrible separation of business and IT, or business, customer and supplier, which doesn't work in Agile. In Agile, we need to work together for continuous specification, for continuous user acceptance testing, for the continuous reviews. And if we don't have it, we won't be able to create enough business value. That's our problem. We won't be able to have a real adaptation. That's different from traditional projects in which business is more involved in the project in the beginning and at the end of the project. So when you want to have an agile project, you should make sure that you have enough access to your business. Talk to them, tell them why it is necessary and what are the consequences. That's for their own best. After all, the real value is created in the business side. That's why we need to have them in the project to answer questions, to direct the path of the project and everything else. So make sure your business understands that it's not only overhead for them, it's for their own best. Principle number 5, build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support their need and trust them to get the job done. In traditional projects, we are really process-based. Each person is usually focused on certain specialist activities. The person has certain inputs, processes and tools, does something specific and creates an output. And those people are usually not concerned with the project as a whole, especially when you have a few people working on multiple projects at a time. And this creates a lot of problems. In Agile, each person is usually responsible for everything. Maybe it's better to say accountable for everything. We need people to help each other, to take responsibility and everything else. Maybe not everyone is ready for that kind of commitment. Some people are more comfortable when they have everything defined for them. They know exactly what they are supposed to do. But in a perfect agile environment, we prefer to have a free collaborative environment in which the only goal for people is to get the project done and nothing else. So each person should ask themselves, how best can I serve the project? Instead of what is my expertise. That's different. Well, here we have a little bit of problem with PRINCE2 principles, in my opinion. In PRINCE2, we really believe that people need to know what others expect from them and what they can expect from others. We can also talk about it later on. But the fact is that the default version of PRINCE2 is created for large and complex projects. And agile projects are usually, originally created for smaller projects. When you have a lot of people working on the same project, it is usually required to have defined roles and responsibilities. But in Agile, well, we have this problem. Actually, it's serious. Can we scale Agile? Some people believe that it's not right to scale Agile. It was initially created for small projects, small groups. And the only reason we try to scale them is that, well, it's only the large companies who have the money to spend for consultants and everything else. But anyway, we have many scaled forms of agility. And maybe it doesn't make sense much if you want to use a combination of PRINCE2 and something like Scrum, unless you have a really large and complex project. Anyway, you have to follow this. You have to motivate people, trust them, give them power to decide. You remember, because when we want to have adaptation, we are deciding all the time, so people need to be self-organized. Principle number 6, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversations. Maybe we can even say informal face-to-face conversations. There are, when you want to use formal or other types of conversation, the amount of overhead is just too much. When you keep it simple, informal, and face-to-face, it usually works better. That's just based on experience. This principle usually is the source of many questions, both in PRINCE2 Agile exam and in every other Agile or even Scrum examination. So remember this, face-to-face conversations are always preferred in Agile. Principle number 7, working software is the primary measure of progress. How do you measure progress? Some people use really abstract ideas such as lines of code. What does it mean, how many lines of code? First of all, it can mean different things in different projects. Maybe someone writes the same thing with more lines. And on the other hand, how do you want to understand what, for example, 100,000 lines of code mean? Is it a 10% progress, a 15% progress, or a 19% progress? It all depends on your initial estimation of the number of lines of code. And that kind of initial estimation is never reliable. On the other hand, it is completely activity-based. It's based on work instead of product or outcome. And you know, in PRINCE2 we say that we should be focused on product instead of activity. That's always important for any kind of project. And in Agile, even we try to be focused more on the outcome instead of the output or product. But anyway, things like lines of code or man hours spent on the project, they are not working. Our goal is to create a working software that serves the outcome. So when we want to measure progress, we must measure it based on the working software. That seems obvious. And it is possible to do it based on working software. And we have certain rules depending on the framework or methodology or techniques we are using. For example, we don't count something in our progress unless it is 100% done. It's about small pieces of work. So we never say that, okay, this user story was 10 story points and we are halfway through the user story until the end of the sprint. So let's say that's 5 story points of actual performance and sum it up with everything else. No, that generates 0 performance for us. We will count the amount of story points for the items we have done, 100% done, and then that would be our measure for progress. Principle number 8, Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Don't do overtime work. That's not productive. It lowers your quality. That's disaster. And also on the long run, your productivity will be lower as well. What is your constant pace? I don't know. It depends on individuals and teams, but you should find your constant pace and do not pressure yourself too much. After all, you should also enjoy life and be happy. Happy teams work better. Principle number 9, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. We don't have upfront design, and that makes it a little bit risky for us. How are we going to make sure that we have technical excellence? One point here is that it's much easier for us to have a high quality. We will talk about it a lot, and the main reason is that our quality activities, especially the tests, are not compressed at the end of the project. They are continuous. And that end of the project is where you don't have enough time and you want to cut things. So you basically, in a traditional project, remove some of your quality activities. But Since in Agile, quality activities are done throughout the project, it doesn't matter when you cut your project, you always have enough ratio of quality activities. However, we still need to care about technical excellence and architecture. For example, one of the ways we do that is through continuous refactoring. Refactoring is when we improve code without changing the external behavior. So let's say you have a piece of functionality you have done before in a previous iteration and it's working, but you know that the code is not good enough. It may create problems for you in the future. That's also called technical debt. So if you want to go on like this, you don't know what's going to happen to you in the future when you want to add new features. Instead of that, you spend a certain capacity of your team, for example, 10%, 5%, 20%, depending on the situation, to continuous refactoring. You go back to your previously done features and improve them. Nothing changes for the customer, nothing changes for the end user, but you know that you have paid some of your technical debt and everything will be safe in the future. Principle number 10. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. You remember that 45% disaster? I told you before, when we talk about simplicity, it's about removing everything that are not really required in our software. It's not only about those that are never used, it's also about those that are rarely used or only sometimes used. And the reason for that is they make your solution complex. Everything becomes complicated, and therefore adding new features that you really need will be harder in the future, as well as maintaining the solution, supporting it, training it, and therefore your total cost of ownership will be much higher. If you consider all the costs, not only the project cost, but also the cost of training and maintaining, supporting, then you will see that those items do not bring any real value to your project. That's simplicity. Principle 11. The best architecture requirements and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Self-organizing means that people need to find their own way instead of receiving orders. We don't have a command and control system in most Agile frameworks, or at least people are more empowered than usual. They need it because we have a lot of decisions to make in our projects. If you don't have it and you want to escalate all the time, you will have problems. Principle 12. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behaviors accordingly. It's mainly about retrospectives. You know them. For example, in a Scrum, we have a retrospective meeting at the end of each iteration to find a way to improve the way we work in the next sprint. We always need to do that. We believe in continuous improvements. We believe that there's always room for improvement. And that plays a big role in our Agile projects. The fact that we use time boxes, we use iterations, I think makes it easier for us to improve our system. You know, before each iteration, you pick one small item for improvement during the next iteration. And you know that you want to make it happen until the end of the iteration in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Makes you focused on that. And at the end of the iteration, you can evaluate it and see where you are and where you want to go. When you don't have the time boxes, it's a little bit harder to track how you're continuously improving your project.